Good evening. Thank you for being with us tonight. I guess because we're also online, I need to introduce myself, which I like to try to do. My name is Mark Mamagonian. I'm the Director of Academic Affairs of the National Association for Armenian Studies and Research, NAASR. Thank you for joining us for wall painting in Ani, Horomos, and Mren with Professor Christina Maranci. Tonight's talk is the first in a series of 3 that will take place this year on the art of Armenian church mural painting, and this series is supported by a grant from the Dadurian Foundation. We thank the Dadurian Foundation for this, which is now their 3rd year of generous support of our programs. Speaking of generous support, we also thank all of you who are NAASR members and supporters. And please, if you are not currently a member, but like the work we are doing in support of Armenian studies, please join tonight. You can do so in person or online. If you aren't sure how, talk to me later or email us. We'll walk you through it. Or you can talk to Silva Setrakian, who is in the back of the room and always ready to sign up new members. Moving right along. Our speaker tonight, Christina Maranci, is the Mashtots Professor of Armenian Studies at Harvard University. This is the first time she's speaking at NAASR in that capacity. Just a few weeks ago, we had a wonderful celebration in Cambridge of Christina's appointment, which, of course, actually took place last year, and she just has concluded her first academic year as the Mashtots Chair at Harvard, which is an appointment in both the Department of Near Eastern Languages and Civilizations and the Department of History of Art and Architecture. And her taking of the Mashtots Chair followed nearly 15 years as the Arthur H. Dadian and Ara Ostamel Chair of Armenian Art and Architectural History at Tufts University, where she had succeeded her mentor and friend, and our friend, Professor Lucy Dermanuelian. Christina earned a bachelor's in art history at Vassar and a master's and PhD at Princeton in the Department of Art and Archaeology. Her work explores the art and culture of Armenia in all of its aspects, but with a special emphasis on the late antique and medieval periods. And she is the author of 4 books and more than 100 articles and essays on medieval Armenian art and architecture, including the books The Art of Armenia, Oxford 2018, and 2015's Vigilant Powers, 3 Churches of Early Medieval Armenia, which won the Karen Gould Prize for Art History from the Medieval Academy of America and the Sona Aronian Prize for Best Armenian Studies Monograph from this organization, NAASR. Christina is a co-founder of East of Byzantium, a workshop and lecture series designed to support doctoral students working on the Christian East, and also serves currently as the president of the Society for Armenian Studies. But in addition to all of this, which we might say constitutes her official bio, the stuff I have to say, there is more which is perhaps less official but no less important, but at least for me, and I think for NAASR, just as important. Christina has been a valued and trusted friend and collaborator for almost 25 years. She's given many lectures for NAASR here in Belmont and in many other places. She's participated in conferences we've organized. She serves on NAASR's Academic Advisory Committee, where she formally provides feedback on grant proposals and other scholarly matters, but also less formally is always there as a sounding board for on too many occasions for me to mention. And in general, has always been willing to do almost anything we've asked, whether reasonable or not. And I think it's for the unreasonable things most that I say, thank you. And the requests will continue to come. So, please welcome Christina Maranci to give her presentation. Water.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you, NAASR. Thank you to the Dadurian Foundation. I thank NAASR for giving me both my job and my husband. And yes, I'm very lucky. Okay, so Hi, everyone. I've got so much material. I'm not going to keep you more than my allotted 40. No, but I do have so much information to share. And for those of you who were listening to a Zoom lecture of mine from 2 years ago to the Association Internationale des Études Arméniennes, some of this will be familiar, but there's also new stuff that I have literally just found. So it's going to be a mix of perhaps some familiar things if you were at that Zoom lecture, and if not, it's going to be all new things. So yeah, this is ongoing work. I'm showing you here. Can any of you tell, have you been looking at this? This is a face. There's a face here. It's been there's a beard, and it's been completely sort of scratched out, and holes are dug in it. But that was a face, and that was actually carving to kind of indicate for the painter where the painting should go. But now all that's left is those incisions. We'll be looking at that again, but that's from Mren, and that I took pictures of last August. But first, just a sense of what I do and how I do it. So when I say is, I'm presenting new stuff, what does that even mean? Because really new, I can't know what's in people's cameras or what they've seen, but I can tell what's in this scholarship and what isn't, and sort of what's the corpus we're working with. So that's my kind of interlocutor. What do we know? What's published about these monuments and their wall paintings? My experience with this material is always it's best to do it collaboratively. People have different cameras, they have different minds and perceptual apparatus, they have different eyes, and so it's really good always to get somebody's sense of, hey, what do you see here? So I'm actually very excited always to share this material and ask you, indeed, what you see. So you're going to be, this is not just you sitting here today, we're going to do this as a classroom, as a workshop, and look together, and you'll tell me what you see as well. But what the end result I look for always is to try to put together programs of wall painting, and you see the one, that's Mren. That's an Adobe Illustrator version of the wall painting at Mren, which is where I really started this work. It's at a 7th century church that I visited many, many years ago when I discovered those wall paintings. And then I visited again just last August. So what my method is basically I take a good quality photograph, the best I can take, then use Photoshop and manipulate it. I don't add specific lines or points. I do everything just generalized to the whole image. So I'm really not trying to inject myself very much into this. And I see what I can find. So sometimes it's like a slot machine, you know? Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. But what I found quickly, particularly with Mren, way back, it must have been in 2013, is that what I thought I saw, really was there. And so I think you can you all see what that is? It's like a hand, right? Kind of, sort of. Skeptics, hand with a scroll. Yes. Yeah, let me see if I can. Yeah, all right. So this kind of work, it depends on what technology you have and what you can bring to bear. I don't have a very fancy camera. I don't have the, 5-figure cameras that are out there, and I don't use specialized software like D-Stretch, but my results, I've been able to tell, are pretty good. So I'm showing you just 2 images of wall paintings from Ani Cathedral. In both cases, do you have a pointer?
Yeah, I thought you might have.
Oh, yeah, a pointer would be great. Okay, and that way I can sort of just take you around a little bit, these paintings. Thank you. There we go, excellent. Oof. All right, thank you. So, okay, so here, do you see there's like a bovine here, like a bull head, diamond eyes, horns? So these are just the same image, one my own image using Photoshop and the other with D-Stretch, which is a fancier software, just to give you a sense of what's possible. There is, of course, always the risk of mistakes, and it's important to kind of put that out there. What are we looking at when we're looking at a wall painting? How do we know what we're looking at is something a painter put down there intentionally, or is it just a crack, or is it graffiti? And we'll talk more about graffiti soon. And the more sensitive the software, the more sensitive, your ability to modulate, to modify, the more mistakes you can make. But it's important also to remember this isn't something that's new with Adobe Photoshop. When you develop a picture, when you develop a photograph, when you make a line drawing, you're always making choices. And it's an interpretative exercise anytime you make a representation. So it's not fair just to kind of single out Photoshop. What's really important for all of this is not so much the technology. It's knowing what is within the horizon of your expectations for medieval Armenian painting. What could we possibly see? Now, if you don't know what you're going to find, if you don't know what the possibilities are, the conventions, the probabilities, let's say, you're going to have a hard time working with this material. And so that knowledge of artistic conventions, like, okay, I saw a bull there, it's most likely I should look for an eagle, a man, and the lion, right? Because it's the 4 living creatures of Christ. So that kind of having that knowledge is very important to this work. And then, as I mentioned, collaboration, testing, feedback. So just, giving you some sense of this. On the left is a photo I took with Photoshop, and I was thinking, what is this? Is this, for example, an eye over there? You can see kind of what looks like almost ducts, you know what I mean, like the rim of an eye. And then that maybe looks like an ear. So I kind of drew it on the left, just line drew it from the photograph. And then my colleague in Turkey, Vedat Akçayüz, he's a professional photographer using his camera, actually made it very clear that is, in fact, a creature. This is the Lion of Mark that's also on Ani Cathedral. So this is just a little bit of a preface to what I want to talk about now. So I want to take you through a bunch of different churches, and we'll just look at some of the newer work I've done. So I've already talked in other venues about what I did at Mren and what I did at Ani Cathedral. We'll come back to both those sites again because I was there at both of those places with my new camera and was able to pick out some more things. But in the meantime, I want to take you to these places. So a cave tomb called the Tomb of Tigran Honents, which is in Ani. A church, and you probably know all these places, but I'll just tell you anyway. So a church of St. Gregory, Abu Ramrent, which is at Ani, and then nearby at Horomos, the church of Srpgevorg. So we're going to start at the cave tomb, which you see here indicated, and it's a 13th century tomb. It's not, I think, technically permissible to visit. I think, it's always hard to sort of divine where it is precisely you're supposed to go at Ani. But yeah, so anyway, but there it is, and here's just a close-up. It's a little bit of a climb to get up there, but you're rewarded because inside, as you can see, is frescoes. They're just like, this interior is painted, and it's really interesting, and you can almost see, too, like the edge of the mortar where, this has clearly been destroyed. So luckily we have older photographs. We have photographs from the excavations of Mar and that period. So we have like this black and white photograph from a early 20th century publication. We have a wonderful corpus of inscriptions, so we know what that box, what it said, because we have this information going back to Josep Orbeli. And so we have that inscription. And just to give you a sense of what this inscription looks like now, this is what it looks like now. So this is really dark, but this is, yeah. Is it right? No, wait, hold on. Let me find it. Yeah, this is it right here. It's really hard to read. And it's been also covered in graffiti, so it's even harder to read now. But, this is the kind of thing where using Photoshop can really help. So here's just another view of the whole, and I want to focus on Jesus Christ, who's right here, enthroned. And you can probably tell that he's holding a book. And if you do a little work on that, you can, in fact, you can actually start to read it and see what he's holding. So this was not hard to do. It lent itself, this is just my ugly line drawing, but it's Yes Yam Luz Ashchari, I am the light of the world, John 8:12. And so that is to say it's a common apse inscription type it sounds kind of deflating. It's always interesting when you discover new texts. It's something that we see, John 8:12, we see it at Hachpat, we see it in Georgia as the gospel text that Christ is holding. I'm an art historian, so I'm interested in what John 8:12 would have meant, particularly how it would have resonated at this site in the 13th century at Ani. And it's interesting to compare these two texts, the gospel text of Christ that he's holding and the dedication text to the right. And this is an interesting moment when you can do intertextual analysis. You can think about how the themes of John 8, of Father and Son, of enemies of Christ, how those would have resonated between John 8 and this text about the enemies of the cross of Christ and Tigran and his sons. So there's a lot of really interesting work you can do once you find those texts and start to work with them. It's not just about text, though. It's also about images, and I want to turn now to the left side of the tomb and look at this. So what you see here, let me just go back again. So what you're looking at is just if you were to turn and look at this wall, and you would see this. And what is this? So this has been studied. I'm not, discovering these things for the first time. This was already studied in the early 20th century by Kipshidze, who tells us that this composition is unlikely to represent the family of the rich Ani town dweller buried here, meaning Tigran Honens, who lived at the turn of the 12th, 13th centuries. Such an assumption is contradicted by the halos around the heads of the represented figures. So he's just saying this isn't Tigran Honens, and he's noticing some halos here and saying that means these can't be lay persons. And then Nicole Thierry, great art historian, said these are three haloed persons. The one on the left is perhaps a woman, and we'll look more carefully at these, but that's who she's referring to. The second, a lay person, where, according to Nicole Thierry, wears a vestment with an embroidered tiraz, a sleeve, like a banded sleeve. Can you see that? You're going to see it in a minute, don't worry. And then all turned towards Christ, she says, in an imploring attitude, the hands extended. So, okay, that's what we have in terms of scholarship. What can we see? So here's a detail of those leftmost two figures, and I'm just going to go into Photoshop now, and we're going to now bring out a little bit of the colors, of the contrast, so you can start to see. Now, forgive me for my artistic license. What I did was, in order to further bring this out, further make it readable, is I just line drew over so that you could see a little bit more what I was looking at. And you can see that you have figures, two figures, both of them with these vestments that cross each other, both of them with armbands, and both of them halos. Whether the one on the left is a woman or not, I don't think so. But we're moving down now. So we're going to go, basically just moving down here to this area. And you may say, what in the world is there? You're crazy. It's just a lot of graffiti. But I'm going to show you what we can find. So there's obviously the graffiti. But then if we look very carefully, you can see ochre, and that ochre is the underpainting that the painter used to delineate the hands. And so basically, this kind of patient work can reveal a cross and other things, and it can make meaning. So here, just a reminder that this figure's holding a cross, and the inscription mentions enemies of the cross. So there's, again, work to be done here, intertextually and word and image, thinking about how meaning is made at this site. Okay, now I want to go to the second figure over, who's in that, I want to sort of look at that, where that blue box is. And so we're just, again, using Photoshop. Here, we're getting in closer. And And here again, using the ochre, I think you can probably now sort of start seeing the way I'm seeing, and you can see this. And this is where, sometimes I get angry at the people who make these silly drawings on wall painting, but often what they're doing, like that creature, but what they're doing often is actually responding to what they already see. So you can give you clues as to what you might find. I mean, that creature was probably drawn there to pretend to be like biting the hand. So, there are different ways you can sort of problem solve, let's say, with this material. Yeah, so we're starting to get a sense here of a painting program, and it can be compared very nicely to Hakpat, to the 13th century painting at Hakpat. Okay, so now what are we going to do? We are going to look at so this is just sort of, again, where these guys are. These are the tombs, and this is where we're looking. We're going to move all the way over to this one, that one, all the way to the right. So right here. Let me see how I'm doing on time. Okay. And again, this is what it looks like, just nothing. This is what happens when you add Photoshop. You start to pull apart those tones. And notice here, too, there's something you learn as you do this, which is about the practice of the iconoclast. What it means to destroy an image, because usually it's not just random. They go for eyes, faces, and hands. So there's almost a forensic quality to this work. You get sort of accustomed to certain kinds of damage, and it can even tell you where figures used to be. So this figure is interesting, and here you can see those outstretched hands. And so here this figure is clearly stretching out the hands, and they are stretching out towards Christ. So that's the direction of Christ. But I want you to look down to the right, because I think there's something more here. I think there's room here for another figure. And if you look down there, you can see this what I see is maybe the top of a head. So I'm saying, it's my proposition, that there's something here. And this makes me go back again to think about the inscription, which mentions Vortots Yorots, his sons. And this, I think, could have been that son. That's my speculation. And if that's the case, that's not so much like other 13th century paintings of elites from Armenia. And you see here the famous Queen Karen Gospels, where the family, the father, and the sons are doing something similar. They are reaching out their hands to Christ, and you have this nice sort of differential in height. More work to be done there, but it makes sense of that strange gap in the fresco. Okay, so let's move ahead. We're going to now back up a little bit and work on this area to the left of the tomb, which is also very interesting. So here you can see a kind of a close-up. And again, you see where the damage is focused on the faces. But let me show you what happens when we put this into Photoshop and we add some line drawing. You get this wonderful archer. Again, this isn't something I discovered. I'm enhancing what has already been done. But I think we can say very clearly what that exactly means. So you have my version on the left, and then you have Thierry, who sees something slightly different, but we can just focus on this for now. This is her line drawing, and then much earlier, this guy Kestner, who was a Russian lieutenant, and this is what he saw. So clearly there is damage here, and we need to deal with that. But let's look at this. What you're looking at here is just in front of our archer. So let me go back for a minute. See, this is the rump of an animal here, right? So let's go forward. And here's the hole. So the rump of the animal is now over here. We're looking all the way over here. And here you can clearly see, I think, there's a big green saddle, and you've got an animal. I think it's a long-eared animal. I don't think it's a horse. A mule, perhaps. These were elite objects, elite commodities. Beautiful mules were a thing. And this is where we can really make advances on our knowledge. So Thierry did not see that at all. She sort of ends her line drawing right about there, and then she sees something very different over there, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But just to say that this kind of, one thing I like to do as a horse person as well as an art historian is like look at tack and look at what kinds of saddles are used and what kinds of harnesses and cruppers and chess pieces. These are useful indices to dates as well as anything else. Okay, so here's my comparison. Nicole Thierry, her maybe I think from the 90s on the upper left, her line drawing, and then you have mine below. And you can see there's one really big difference, and that is she kind of insists on this creature that seems to be climbing a mountain on the left. And that is because she thinks that this is a scene of St. Eustathius. And St. Eustathius was a saint who went out hunting, and when he was out hunting, he saw a vision of God in between the antlers of a stag. So that's what I think she sees here, and she gives some other examples. And so that's what she sees. I do not see this. I do not see this. You tell me what you think you see. Okay, let me put this into Photoshop. So here it is, going back, okay? Do you see where the square is? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to put lines around what I see. I don't know what this is. A+ for anybody who figures it out. I had a radical idea today that there's another really pointy, weird thing that I saw at Horomos that I thought, why don't I just put them together? Because I don't know what either one of them is. So any thoughts, any suggestions, please let me know. But this is what it looks like to me. So I don't know what the archer and his friend, the long-eared friend, are doing, but it's not St. Eustathius. And this is where it's really interesting to see how arguments are made out of line drawings, and you can. They're not just evidence, neutral evidence. This is really very clear, I think. So, okay, let's move on. I want to take you. We're just going to keep going. This is actually a view of Grigor Abu-Ramrens from the tomb of Tigran Honetz. So we're actually standing in the tomb right now, and we're looking at the beautiful Church of St. Gregory, which is covered in wall painting. This is a weird upside-down photo, but this is absolutely covered and has received almost no attention in the scholarship. So whereas everybody, there's literature on the cave tomb I just mentioned, but this one nobody has talked about it in the literature. So there was a lot of room to work with this. There are figures that are all over this, and I'm just showing you some of them, and they're all kind of pointing. This looks like weirdly anime to me, but it's not. It's just my own line drawing. But I'm just going to sort of show you little bits of it. If you look really carefully at this, I see some things like, I see a book and I see a wheel. My favorite part is this, which is, can you see anything here? Yes, thank you. Yes, there's a face here, and that face is actually, along with that face is, let me just go back for a minute, you can see there's a lion on one side and a bull on the other, and I think it's and maybe there's an eagle on top, but some kind of living creature situation, that's as far as I've got with that. So I get something like this, but this is rudimentary. I definitely need to do more work on it. But there's an image of Christ enthroned, and then below there are more figures. And then on the side, just to the left, is a equestrian saint, and probably another one as well, because you can see there's another scepter right there. So there's a lot to do. Let me see. Yeah, and I think actually the painter is the same painter. The same painter, I think, who painted the tomb of Tigran Honetz also painted the church of St. Gregory Abu Ramrens. And on the right is one of the archangels from the tomb of St. Gregory that I didn't show you. And on the left is that creature. And for me, these are very similar in terms of style, the fleshy sort of petulant looking lips and the almond eyes and the round cheeks, and the treatment of the eyebrows is very similar for me. So yeah, so that's not it. I'm keeping on going. That's so far we did the caves, right? The cave of Tigran Honens. We did St. Gregory. We can move forward now to Horomos and talk about Horomos. That's if any of you have been there, it's very difficult to get there. It's not permissible. It's considered to be a military zone. But I was fortunate to be able to go, and in fact, there's wall painting there, and some of it's been published. And I should say there is one real sort of I don't know what's it called, but like really kind of someone that we need to be thankful for in this is Garen Matevosyan, who's a historian in Yerevan, but he actually edited a big volume on Armenian frescoes. So, and that came out just a few years ago. So that's really also building our knowledge of this fairly new field. And, so much attention has been given to manuscripts and to buildings, churches, but wall painting hasn't really been studied as much as it should, and there's so much more to do. But this is the kind of, image that we have of Horomos, Surp Gevork, in the dome, and you can't really tell much from that. That's really not very useful. So I just wanted to, so I took a picture. Let me just go straight to this. So this is a picture I took when I was there, and then I used Photoshop, went in, and then I started to trace those lines, and then you can take it away, and you get a line drawing, and you can see this is a very beautiful, very carefully painted image of Christ enthroned. And the same thing can be done with the area below, using the same methods. So you have here, I hope you can see a row of standing, probably saints, apostles, evangelists, on either side of Surp Gevork. So this is all stuff that can be done, and I'll show you at the end. This is actually a really wonderful way to teach Armenian art to students because it really forces them to look very carefully at every line, everything, and that's something that's really crucial if you're going to do this work. And then just a little bit more at Horomos. I'm kind of racing through this. So you're looking at the north wall of Horomos, and you can see from the publication on the left that you have these standing figures. These are bishops, and you probably can't tell anything from this. Maybe you can. Can you see some stuff? Okay. And so I'm going to add my own line drawing, and I think that I think in addition to the two figures that have been published, there's a third figure who's smaller, and then like that. And then look really carefully and tell me if you see any inscriptions. Yes. Good. Okay, I'm glad you see that. So I'm not going. Yes, I see inscriptions, and I think I'm still working it out. I see a sort of something to do with Vormutun, something about mercy towards the bottom, Vorm down there. But still, this is still, I've not been able to translate it yet. But that's it. And then there's more here. There's this, which is one of these, sometimes it's called, it's just like, it's a initial, it's a gabakir, sometimes it's called, but it's like a joined letter or initial, and it's like, this is from Chutkonk, like this is from Chutkonk, where it's just basically, it's sort of Astvad's der or something like that. So we have a lot of these in ochre paint, and they have lasted, so we still have those. Okay, so I'm just going to go forward a little bit more. I don't want to take you to Mren. So I was at Mren, as I said, I've been going there a lot, but I went there with my new camera in August, and so I have more pictures. And again, it's very addictive to do this work. You just can't stop, and you never know what you're going to find. And so it's an amazing feeling when the deep past comes and hits you in the face, when somebody is looking at you that you never knew was even there. I'll show you this in a minute with one of these. But these are pictures I already knew were there. So this is a part of an image of a standing Christ. So Christ is, this is his head. And this, by the way, when I first saw this kind of weird, you see these weird lines here? I thought that was hair. And now looking really closely, I can see this is somebody who's taken something and basically hacked away at Christ's face. This is not hair, and you can see it go right through his face. So that's the kind of the really depressing side of this work. You see very close up the kinds of harm and vandalism that's done. Things that I thought were there, I was really happy to find sort of confirmed. So this was an image you can see very fragmentary of a figure, a saint, or an angel. You can see the eyes, right? Can you see that? Like eyes, eyebrows, hair, halo, and then a kind of frame. And so that's still there. And then this is on the north wall, and it is an image of a bishop, and I really didn't have a good handle on it, and I think I have a better handle on it now. Wait, yeah. So this is the figure that's actually incised. And this is where that head is, that beard, the incised beard. And in fact, a lot of it is incised, but I'm just showing you again that. And then just a few more things and then I'll stop. But this is, what do you see here? You see a face? Yes. Yeah, this was new to me, so I was just like, but here he is. Yeah. So that was just, can you imagine? I mean, how does it feel for him? He's been staring out at people for, how many centuries, and nobody's noticed him, but yeah. So this is the kind of thing that is very exciting, and there's so much more work to be done, and you can even see his hands. He's making a kind of blessing gesture with his hands. You may be able to see down there. So then now I want to take you just last to Ani Cathedral, because I've been working, that's kind of that's what I'm doing, working in earnest on Ani Cathedral, and so I wanted to take you inside there. And again, I've done a lot of presentations on Ani Cathedral, but I wanted to focus in on this, because at first I thought this is maybe part of the throne, but let's just go in a little closer. Let's go in even closer, or add a little bit of Photoshop. No lines added, and I think you can see this isn't part of a throne. This is actually writing. And I love a crossword puzzle. I love a puzzle, and so I've been working on this literally just for the last 2 nights. So, and I think what it is John 5:24. I think that it's something like vor is pan. Let me just go to the next slide. Vor is panen im lese yev havada einem vor arakiatzen zis unduni is gyansen havedenaganas. I think. So that would be John 5:24, he that hears my word and believes, in him that sent me will have everlasting life, which would make a lot of sense as an apt inscription. And it also makes me think about the whole apps. And again, this is at this point a hypothesis, but I think that there was something I wondered about in lectures past about there's this figure, you're not maybe going to be able to see it very clear. There's a figure on the right, and I thought it was Ezekiel. And now I'm thinking that this is actually John, and with Prochoros, his scribe, and that this is from the Revelation. So what you're seeing is a very heavily Johannine image with the Gospel of John and from this scene of Revelation, which is where those living creatures appear, in addition to the vision of Ezekiel. So, gamatz, we'll figure it out, but this is sort of I guess, sharing with you the work in progress. And just one last thing I wanted to show you, something that a student of mine did. Micah Weld did this. They put together for my seminar 2-3 years ago at Tufts. They actually stitched together all these images from the dome at Achtamar, and made this wonderful, sort of like massive line drawing of the whole thing. So I do think that with good mentoring and guidance, this is a wonderful way to talk to students and teach students about Armenian painting. And with that, I think I will end, and thank you all for your attention. Say it's 8:15 or 8:10. Is that okay?
Unless you have more.
No, that's it. That's all I have. Yeah, oh. Yeah, I'd be glad to take questions. Oh, I'm gonna have some water. Yeah.
There's always more.
There's always more.
There's always more. So what do you do now? With you are building towards
Yeah,
what?
yeah. So this is what I'm doing right now. That really, a lot of that stuff was just for fun. What I'm doing with the Ani stuff is this is going to be part of my Ani book. And what I need to, one of the biggest problems with this is just date. When does this date to? And I feel in my heart of hearts that this is 10th, this dates to the construction of the cathedral. I know that there are other people who might say it's 13th century. I don't think it is, but I have to contend with that. And so I have to be very careful about how I contextualize it within, my discussion. But ideally, the Ani Cathedral fresco program will form part of the book. And the other stuff, it'll be published here and there, but no huge plans. Yeah.
Are there high resolution enough versions of like significantly earlier photographs?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah.
Less
Yeah.
egregious state of degradation that you can work backwards from?
It's harder to work with those kinds of photographs. I have tried, but you can sometimes find stuff. Like, I'll give an example of Robert Edwards' work in Cilicia, and he has photographs sent from Anna Varza, which was painted, the church was painted, and I was able to get a little bit out. Not as much as if you have like a digital photo that is, but it is possible to do some work, yeah.
Yes.
In relation to Ani, where is Horomos and Mren located?
Yeah. So Horomos is very close to Ani. It's east of Ani, and it's within a day's travel. So that was actually the burial site for the Bagratid king. So it's a long walk. Mren is south and east, and it's a good 45-minute to an hour drive, and I hesitate about that because it's really not a drivable. It's not a drivable terrain, so you have to get out and walk, and from the nearest village. So Mren is, Horomos is really almost a part of the Ani neighborhood, whereas Mren is really kind of a different neighborhood, I would say. Yeah.
Can you discuss the state of your access or people's access generally to these sites?
Yeah, so Ani is accessible. Not all of Ani. Like the caves are not, I feel like I'm being naughty when I go to the caves, but I don't know. But then if you know Ani, you know that like the Akçabert, where there's a church that's kind of in the distance, or Kızkale it's called, that's off limits. It's not always easy, as I said, to divine what you can and can't do. Like for a while you weren't supposed to go to the Citadel, but now you can. So it's always a kind of moving target with Ani. Now with Mren, it's not. It's a military zone, and you need permission, and Horomos even more so. Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
I was
Oh.
And also, separately, do you ever do anything about graffiti? Or
Mm-hmm.
leave it there?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great, I didn't even think about the idea of a tower. You mean for the pointy thing? Yeah. I mean, you want to think there about conventions, so conventions for architecture too. So in the 13th century, what would a tower look like? And we're lucky that we have manuscripts, so we can kind of do some comparisons and sort of think about horizons of possibilities. That would be a pointy tower. It's not impossible. You know, I was also thinking about a cross, but crosses don't look. Yeah, I mean, it looks more like a weapon than it does like a cross. That pointy cross that would look really weird. But yeah, I don't know, maybe. And then the second question about the graffiti, that's a hard call. Some of the graffiti is quite historic, and there's a lot. If you've been to Ani, you know there's a lot of Armenian graffiti all over it from the early 1900s. So I have a bigger problem right now with the whitewashing the graffiti too. And in fact, parts of Ani, the apps, they've just recently whitewashed to clean up the graffiti, which is bad because I can't get through that extra layer. I just can't. And that's a problem, yeah. But it's a good question, and it's something that, as you know, Ani Cathedral is right now being stabilized, and so one of the things that's going to happen is that we're going to have to reckon with that wall painting and what to do with it, you know, and how to protect it. Best way to do that and kind of respect historical layers, but also protect it from further vandalism, further, you know, whatever it might face in the future. So there's a lot of quite really interesting questions.
Yes.
So I want to know your objective as of now. Is it strictly documentation, or you're hoping to work on covering restoration?
Yeah.
Is that something
Yeah.
like
No, not for me. I'm interested in these as art history, and I'm interested in what they can tell us about the building in terms of restoration, in terms of kind of building on what's there. That's not something I'm trained to do. There are people who are conservators who do that work, and I would expect they would do it, you know, in the most ethical, the most responsible way possible. What I can do possibly is help in the sense of like bringing out the information, but that's where that's where my kind of specialty, my expertise is, that's where it ends. But I will be, I hope, advising the people who are working on Ani Cathedral on just these kinds of points, you know.
I have one more quick question. How is it that is anybody doing LiDAR scanning of these? Because it seems like they're getting worse.
Yeah. No one's doing anything like that I know of. It's one of the problems with working, as you probably know, one of the problems of working on the wall paintings in Ani is you can't really bring in any kind of equipment that is, you know, conspicuous. So that was one of the reasons that I do the work I do, the way I do it, is that, yeah, well, I mean, then one could do that, I guess. I don't know. I just use my camera, and but if it's possible to do something without it being sort of obvious, and you know, then I think you could. And now people even fly drones in Ani, so it's probably possible. Yeah.
I saw the gentleman in the back there. Yes.
Hi. Thank you for coming. This is really interesting. I have an interest in Ani, so I'll be reading
Yeah.
your book once it comes out. So my question is, Ani is known as the city of 1,001 churches. So nothing has survived from there as far as manuscripts or scrolls or anything. I know we're talking in 13th century,
Yeah.
or whatever, but nothing has ever come out of there that survived, that's gone on to other places in the world from Ani.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So what do we have from the textual culture, the manuscripts? And we do have things. And in fact, I mentioned Garen Matevosyan, and he's a historian who really focuses on Ani and on Horomos, because those are both centers for manuscript production. So there is material. It's, one of the tragic things, of course, is what happened to Ani, what happened to the excavations, or what happened to not all, but a lot of the most important artifacts. But now that you say that, I don't know that Mar, for example, when he excavated, ever recovered manuscripts. I think those manuscripts were probably gone in the 15th, 16th centuries. They probably went elsewhere. But we do have records of manuscripts, from Ani. But not proportionate, maybe this is more to your question, maybe not proportionate to the number of churches, yeah? It's a very interesting point, yeah.
Erna wants to comment on that.
Yeah,
Would you
please.
Actually,
Oh, yes, of course.
Let me hand you the...
Yeah.
Responding to the gentleman question, in the book that recently was published by Karen Matevosyan,
Yes.
actually he has recorded 100 Armenian families in name. So we know,
That's
exactly.
great, yes.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah,
And
that's wonderful.
we have some information about the manuscripts that were written in Ani and colophons. But I would like to ask a little bit terrible question.
Yeah.
Don't you think that this graffiti actually could be a great help for us? Because I saw that many of them are written in Western Armenian. So this is the time when Armenians were escaping from Turkey. And it could be that, they are some inscriptions telling about their situation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because
written on the
this
walls.
situation starting from 1896.
Yes.
So it could be. What if you will pass all this graffiti to scholars who are
that's great. Thank you
dealing
so
with
much.
genocide.
Whatever is there.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I haven't noticed that kind of information. I've noticed names and years, but I now that you say that, I will be paying more attention to this. Thank you so much.
Question from Steve Sim online. I think Steve has been to Ani once or twice himself, as far as I know. He says, what is left of the Tigran Honen's tomb is its north side? Are the surviving frescoes indicative of a one-time much bigger structure, such as a north arm and a chapel that would have had an equivalent south arm, east apse, or has the tomb always been open air and its present size?
Thank you, Steve.
And he also says the caves are fully open to anyone.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I was there with him, so interesting. Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, the cave tomb is painted on all sides, and it's painted, and we looked at the left side, where the equestrian archer was, and it's also painted on the other side. It's harder to figure that out. Whether it was open or not, I wondered about, or whether it was closed, yeah. I mean, if it were closed, or if there were a way to close it, it's such as Steve knows, this is a very small, precarious place to be. And so my thinking is that it would be open, but then again, you're then exposing all those paintings to the elements. So that also seems like maybe there was some kind of temporary thing, I don't know. And I can't think of any good comparands for it, like any other frescoed tombs that are either covered or not covered, but yeah. But it is painted on all sides. It's just the best preserved parts were the ones I showed.
Judy, I know your hand was up.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions that you kind of answered. The one about the manuscripts. How much can you glean from manuscripts up the era to figure out the dating and the iconography, and also just are the frescoes in the different, churches at Ani and Mren,
Mhm.
are they of a similar style? So do you get the sense that they were all from one period?
It's a good question, yeah. So Mren, for me, is very clearly 7th century, at least the apse decoration. And that is, we have a wonderful evidence for comparing it to a church called Aruch in the Republic, where stylistically, it's amazing how close they are, to the point where you think this has to be the same painter. So that's 7th century. And then Ani Cathedral, this is a question. I feel like it's late 10th, early 11th. And then you get to like the tomb of Tigran Honens, which is 13th century. And then I think St. Gregory, it was painted in the 13th century. There's also the very famous Church of Tigran Honens, but that's painted in a different style. That's also a 13th century building. The style is different, though. It's not the same as in the other two. So I think you're actually dealing with a few different hands, a few different workshops. And then there's also a very interesting situation with the Church of Srpgic, which is a beautiful early 11th century church that was painted in the 13th century that has yet to be really fully studied and may offer more information. And that's actually where there's some very nice historic photos of the apse, which you can tease out a little bit more from. And we know then that, okay, there was a Christ enthroned in the apse. Right now, of course, it's the church that's half there. So, it's the one that you only have half of, but we can get a little bit more information from those historic photos. So there's, I think, a variety within Ani itself. Yeah, with what I think is a clear evidence for that one painterly team or hand working at both the cave and at the Church of St. Gregory.
There's a suggestion from online, I don't think you just said this, but that the Horomos frescoes are similarly arranged to the paintings, as you mentioned, of the apse at Aruch. Is that...
At Aruch or
yes.
Abu Ghamran?
At Aruch.
At Horomos in Aruch?
This is the suggestion.
Well, I mean, in the sense that, in terms of iconography, there is a kind of format. I don't know if this helps, but of Christ standing or enthroned, and then you have in the lower register you have like standing figures, and that's pretty much a standard. Tigran Honens is different because it's a communion of the apostles, but and Ani is complicated, but at Abu Ghamran, at Horomos, you have and also at Aruch, you have these kind of rows of a register of standing figures. So in that sense, yes, yeah.
Other questions? Yes, Barca.
All this graffiti, what is the material they use for the graffiti, and who's doing it, and what's the reason?
So the question is about the graffiti. I'm just repeating for people online, how it was done and who did it.
Well, I mean, I think it really ranges. I mean, so we have some graffiti from the late 19th, early 20th century we were talking about that's Armenian names, and we have a lot of Turkish graffiti that's of a much more recent date. And, what it's made of, what they're using, and sometimes they're scratching. I mean, sometimes this is actually cutting into the mortar. So that's something that I think you would need to do analysis, of the mortar in order to figure out. But I mean, it looks to me like it's probably like, I don't know. So what do people use for graffiti? I have no idea. Not doing it myself. Is it like magic marker? I don't know. But it's a range. It occupies a range of groups of periods of time, and presumably also different tools that you use to do graffiti. But I don't know. It looks to me just, I don't know.
Unfortunately,
I don't know.
graffiti just seems to be a thing that people do or does.
Yeah. I will say what really worries me is the painting over of it at this point, because that is not being done. It's being done indiscriminately, and it's simply to clean up, and that is going to mean that it's impossible to recover what's underneath, or at least some, the way I could do it. Yeah.
Yes, Joe?
What's the position of the local authorities regarding preservation or destruction or tourism or whatever? And how does this affect the situation?
The position of the local authorities regarding the monuments.
I mean, it's complicated. The local authorities are really under the control of the Ministry of Culture and Tourism, and they're the ones who call the shots. So they're the ones who do the projects of restoration, and they're also the ones who produce the propaganda that is the kind of the guides you get now if you go to Ani. So it's not easy to work there, you know that, but the real victims are the monuments. They need advocacy, and they need sensitive work done. So it's important in my case, I'm just me, but it's important for me to, at least when I can, give my knowledge and what I can do to try to help. But it's very hard, and it's not getting easier.
Another online question, Christina. In 1998, a Turkish publication, Ani Preliminary Report, included writings by an American fresco expert, Constance Silver, falsely claiming, it reads here, that the frescoes at Ani are not in their current poor condition due to whitewashing or fading, but because Mar had removed the frescoes using the Strappo method, which A, you'll have to explain.
I have no idea what that is.
And can you respond to that, whether there's any truth to that or if that's completely untrue? What is the Strappo method?
I have no idea what the Strappo method is. This is the first time I'm hearing of that. I'm sure there's a good answer to it, but I will say that what I know of Mar's work is, in terms of frescoes, is he excavated in the Citadel. And in the Citadel, he excavated fragments of frescoes that had fallen. They weren't on buildings anymore. And we know, those are cataloged, and they're not photographed, they're very bad, like they're drawn. I have no evidence that he did anything in terms of taking frescoes away.
Well, if
that
you'd
are from
taken the frescoes away, you wouldn't be able to see what you are seeing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I think that this was damage.
Case dismissed. Okay.
Yeah, I think, and also, let's not forget, Mar himself said we should not take anything away from Ani except ideas. He said that, so I don't think he's going to be taking away frescoes, unless that's an idea. Oh, Jackson. Hi.
I think the Strappo method being referred to is only removing the foremost layer. Of whatever it would be.
Thank you.
Yeah, like the. Yeah.
Thank you, Ani.
Yeah, so just the plaster that the pigment is actually attached.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. So, thank you so much. And Ani here is, of course, an expert conservator in wall painting, so we're lucky to have her. But yeah, I think there are other reasons why those frescoes are in such bad condition.
Then we say, thank you, Christina.
You're welcome.
As always.
Learn something new.
We look forward to the book,
Yeah.
to further research,
Thank you.
and chatting.
Okay, great.
Thank you, everybody online and in person. See you next time.
You can just.
You can take your.
Thank you.